Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to your first writing lesson online. Last week, we began our brand new writing unit of fantasy. And today we're going to go ahead and take a look at day 3, defining elements of fantasy. So in the last lesson, we had a chance to observe a video online, and we noticed the elements of fantasy, what fantasy always contains, what fantasy sometimes contains, and what fantasy never contains. You'll be successful after this lesson once you can recognize the 3 different elements of fantasy: always, sometimes, and never. So today we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at these elements. So the driving question for today is, what do you notice about fantasy? Instead of showing you an 18-minute clip video on The Stranger, which feel free to browse during your own time through YouTube, and instead of listening to an additional picture book to save time, we're going to kind of continue on ahead. You have done such a great job with your fantasy book club books that I know that you already know many of these elements. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to fast forward. So take out your writer's notebook, and once you have your writer's notebook out, I would like you to put this video on pause and go ahead and copy down this chart of what fantasy contains: always, sometimes, as well as never. Before I flip to the next page, and after you have this video on pause, I would like you to ask yourself, what are some of the elements that fantasy always has, sometimes has, as well as never has? After you ask yourself this question, jot down what you know about fantasy. After you jot down your ideas, hit the play button again, and then you can get ready to continue adding to your list. As you can see, fantasy stories always are fiction. They're never real. They contain characters. They always have a plot as well as the events, problem and solution, setting, paragraphs, opening and closing, dialogue, details and elaboration, and parts that are make-believe, imagined, or even magical. Fantasy stories sometimes contain lessons for the real world, magic, animals acting like people, and the setting is a fantastic or an unknown world. And finally, fantasy never contains nonfiction, facts, lists of information, research, statistics, article format, letter format. It's never persuasive, and it's never informative. Go ahead and place this video on pause and add these elements to your chart. When you are finished, click on unpause and hit play again. And your assignment, once finished, copy this down. I would like you to turn back into yesterday's assignment. If you went ahead and if you wrote a piece of fantasy, see if you can identify any of these elements in your fantasy story. Once you are done, you may either choose to continue writing fantasy, write for about 10 minutes. And if you didn't start yet, now may be a good time. Just start writing a little bit of fantasy. We'll talk about the stories that we created during tomorrow's meet at 10 a.m. at our morning meeting time. Okay, that's it for our lesson today. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow.